Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Mark to you guys. Dr. Cheryl Mark is a full-time online core faculty member with CCU. She's a licensed professional counselor in the state of Missouri where she lives and is a nationally certified counselor. She is a trained neurofeedback practitioner and is certified in EMDR. Her clinical passion is to work with those who are traumatized, and her research interests include attachment, self-disclosure, and marital intimacy in military couples. Cheryl is the current board member at large for the International Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, and she is also a board member for Global FC in Kansas City, a soccer club for refugee children that includes tutoring, mentoring, and family engagement. On a personal note, Cheryl has been married for 38 years, and together she and her husband Greg have 3 sons, 3 daughter-in-laws, and 3 grandchildren, with the 4th due next month. She enjoys music, reading, walking outdoors, traveling, and most of all, playing with her grandchildren. We love having Cheryl on staff or as faculty with CCU, and we're so excited that she is going to be sharing with you guys tonight. Cheryl?
Great. Well, thank you for the introduction, Jessica, and thank you all for coming tonight and taking the time to be here. I know that you all have very busy schedules, and I want to thank you, especially for your work with our counseling students. So on behalf of everyone here at CCU who's a part of our program, thank you for all you give to our students. We need you all, and we and our students could not be successful without you. I'm sure that many of you are already very experienced clinical supervisors, and I assume that most of you have already received training in clinical supervision, but it's my hope tonight that each of you will find something of value to take away from our time together this evening. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see this PowerPoint. All right, everybody see it? All right, Jessica, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. All right, so I will present the material that I'm going to bring to you, and there will be a time kind of towards the end of this presentation for us to discuss some things as we cover one part of the content. And then after I finish presenting, we'll have time for further discussion and questions. And so not only is Jessica Vaith, our clinical director, here tonight, but also Dr. Ryan Burkhart, our program director, is here with us, and I'm sure together we should be able to answer the questions that you have. And we will have till 7 o'clock tonight. I hope to hear from all of you. Jessica will be managing the live chat thread, and so if you could post any questions that you have in that forum, we'll be sure to address them at the end of the presentation. So the importance of supervisor training. As we think about supervisor training, we only need to look as far as the Association for Counselor Educators and Supervisors, our ACA Code of Ethics we adhere to, and to our CACREP standards to inform us of our responsibilities. All of these organizations stress the importance of receiving training to supervise counselors in training. As you know, CCU's Master of Arts in Counseling is a CACREP accredited program, and the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs requires that we provide counseling supervision training opportunities for our clinical supervisors, such as this training this evening. Now, beyond our ethical mandate, sorry, that's a little bit slow connecting. Our mission here at CCU is to train competent counselors for the field, and also to ensure that students receive outstanding educational training processes. We want to equip them for licensure through competency training assessment and experiential activities towards success. We strive to help our students grow in their personal, professional, and spiritual lives, and additionally, we want to provide, in this forum and others, resources for you, our site supervisors. We acknowledge your time and your effort spent serving our students, and also the outstanding services you provide our students during their practicum and internship experiences. We know that it takes you extra time and effort to share the expertise and knowledge that you have acquired over your years of education and experience, and we thank you and hope that these trainings provide you with ongoing support and information to enrich not only your work with our students, but with others that you serve. So let's start with a definition of supervision. You can see the citation there. Supervision is defined as an intensive, interpersonally focused relationship in which one person is designated to facilitate the development of therapeutic competence in one or more other persons. Now, according to Newkrug and Schwitzer, part of supervision is to bring our supervisees through that process where they can effectively use the clinical tools that are a part of the change process in our profession. We want them to be able to use the tools of diagnosis and case conceptualization and treatment planning and case management. Additionally, we want to help our supervisees develop their counseling skills. And we also care about how they are functioning personally, specifically when it relates to the clinical work they're doing. Further, our role as supervisors is evaluative, and this ensures that the services that are being provided by our supervisees are appropriate and of high quality, and they don't cause harm. So supervision is an intervention itself, and it's a very critical part of the gatekeeping function of our profession. See, I'm going to ask to make sure that you all have your microphones muted. I'm hearing some background noise, please. I'm wondering maybe if it's noise on the internet. Have you all checked to see that you have your microphone on mute? There, it stopped.
Cheryl, you should be able to mute people's mics as well.
Okay, I'll have to open up. Hold on just a second. Don't see everybody yet until I open up here. Okay, excuse me all just a minute. Okay, it says unmute. Okay, that noise stopped now. All right. So I'm assuming it's on the line because I don't see that anyone has their microphone on. All right, so sorry, we'll get back to it. So you will assume many different roles as a clinical supervisor. You will facilitate integration of your students' self-awareness, their theoretical orientation, their clinical knowledge, skills. You're going to help them improve their professional practice. And you'll do all this while you maintain the supervisory alliance with your supervisee. As a supervisor, you're also in a unique position to advocate for supervisees. So advocacy is a term that really is generally thought of as taking an action, and it's been very popular in the arenas of politics and economics and social systems and institutions. In our field, it's been used when we speak of, say, advocating for social justice. But today, advocacy has become mainstream in the counseling world and profession, and supervisors now are required to teach supervisees to advocate and act on behalf of their clients at a personal level, and also to help clients learn to self-advocate. Also helping them work at the community level and in the greater public arena. And in our positions as counselors and supervisors, we have a keen sense of awareness of many needs and injustices in our world. Now, advocacy is the term of taking action for our clients and making efforts to address some of those changes in our societies that we live in to help improve people's lives. In the context of supervision, supervisors are in a position to advocate for their sites and their supervisees, and also clients through the work of their supervisees. And my experience has been that as supervisors, we can help our supervisees learn to advocate for themselves based on their learning and their understanding of their own needs and how they can articulate them in supervision. And this is a collaborative process. Tonight, we're going to discuss advocacy a little differently in relationship to the personal advocacy or self-advocacy of the supervisee in supervision. So early in a counselor's development, supervision focuses on skill development and case content. And we provide a lot of feedback in that learning process to help in the development of a counselor's identity and also in the development of their skills. And later on, supervision focuses on personal functioning, and the student learns and develops to bring his or her authentic self into the session. Now, as clinical supervisors, we see our students move from a place where they start in some of the tendencies of being a natural helper and going through that developmental process where then they become professional counselors. I encourage you to listen to the natural tendencies of your supervisees, because this style can, you'll hear it, be a fallback for them as they work with clients. It's also important to remember that these ways of helping can also be useful at different stages of working with clients. So are they naturally listeners, analyzers, problem solvers, challengers? Anyway, there's very much about the development of our students that I won't cover tonight. We don't have time. But I would like to address how we can help facilitate that personal advocacy in our supervisees. A very important part of a max student development is the experience of supervision. It's a very complex process, but when you choose a model for supervision, it simplifies the process. Supervision is also an intervention in itself, according to Bernard and Goodyear. And just as we counsel with a theoretical orientation and model and within the bounds of our own competencies, supervision requires we receive training and that we have competence for ethical practice. Tonight, we'll examine the different roles that a supervisor fills to help develop that personal advocacy in our supervisees. I believe the discrimination model of supervision is a beneficial model to facilitate this personal advocacy. So again, there are many different models of supervision. The discrimination model is the one that's the most researched, and it was developed by Janine Bernard in 1979, and she initially used it as a teaching tool when she was teaching a course on supervision. So just as we decide upon a theoretical orientation when we're a professional counselor and going through that process, it's also beneficial if we have a model for our work as clinical supervisors. Now, the discrimination model is a competency-based model, and the focus is on the interactions that are taking place in supervision and the needs of your supervisee in supervision. What does your student need to learn? You may focus on their skills. What are the goals and strategies to meet those goals? The focus is also on how to meet those presenting learning needs in the here and now within session. Again, those should be SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And this discrimination model uses many techniques and theories. Helpful strategies in using this model that we will go over tonight include the supervisory functions of teacher, counselor, and consultant. Now, there's a threefold focus for supervision. We look at intervention, conceptualization, and personalization. And the three supervisor areas, roles that we focus on that the supervisor assumes, three roles are teacher, counselor, and consultant. So you will focus on your supervisee's intervention skills, and you will examine what they're doing in session. What do you observe? And for those who are online faculty, what you're hearing and what do you see in their videos. When we focus on our supervisee's conceptualization skills, we consider how is our supervisee understanding the session? Are they able to identify patterns and themes? And how does our supervisee choose the interventions that they want to use? When we focus on our supervisee's personalization skills, we would ask, how does our supervisee use his or herself in the session? And you want to make sure that they're not contaminating the session with their own issues and if there are any countertransference concerns. Are they able to use immediacy, what's happening in the here and now, which is an advanced skill. So following these observations then of the supervisee, the supervisor will assume a role. Remember, these will be flexible, moving in and between these roles. So they assume the role of teacher, of counselor, or of consultant, and it's based upon the needs of the supervisee. So when a supervisor assumes the role of teacher, you might see your student is challenged maybe in seeing patterns or themes in their clients. When you're in the role of teacher, it's usually with a more novice supervisee. You might be instructing on even on an ethical standard or mandated reporting procedures and walking them through that process. And so now I'll ask you to engage and turn on your microphones. I'll see if I can see you all and your cameras so I can see you. Can you think of examples yourself in which you have acted in the role of teacher in supervision that you're willing to share?
Cheryl, I can just speak to actually supervision that I had this morning with one of my supervisees, where I kind of stepped into this role. One of my supervisees called Child Protection Services, and just helping them kind of walk through that process and understand the ethical mandates and the state statutes around when we call CPS. Or when we call the cops, if it's, homicidality or suicidality, and it's kind of helping them walk through that process and understand our mandates as counselors. I think that kind of fits under a teacher role.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Dr. Burkhart. All right. Anybody else have anything they would like to share?
Well, I was working with a doc student today, and she's trying to sort out. She's getting ready for her comps and trying to sort out what she's getting ready for how she's going to get ready for her thesis. And so we spent some time talking about my approach to my dissertation and her approach to dissertation and other people's approach to dissertation, and trying to find an approach that would work best for her. She really leans towards a naturalistic interview type style. So then I was able to show her some resources off my desk of either people I admire or other students have done that kind of research, and point her in a direction. So that's a teaching function there.
Yes, thank you. So you were teaching and helping her become aware of what different models were out there.
Yes.
Thank you.
We actually were talking about the discrimination model because that's the model she chose as a doctoral level who's doing supervision herself. So, so that was fun.
Great. All right. And I'm sorry I can't see you all to call you by name, to thank you by name, but thank you. Anyone else before we go to the next one? All right, we'll move to the next one. All right. So when the supervisor assumes the role of counselor, and mind you, this is not counseling, it helps your supervisee gain self-awareness and maybe some of the internal processes that are going on during counseling and supervision. But this is where you would help your supervisee be aware of his or her feelings about a session or about a client's behavior. You might want to challenge your client on setting, they might be challenged on setting their goals for their client, or they may not be able to be assertive in a place where they need to be and it becomes uncomfortable. Also, it would be acknowledging emotions and feelings that they have when they're with a client or when a client acts in a certain way. So, instead of me giving some examples, can you think of some examples that you'd be willing to share in which you have acted in the role of counselor in supervision?
So Cheryl, again, just to jump in, which I had another supervisee that I met with yesterday. This supervisee predominantly works with at-risk kiddos who are in gangs coming out of the prison system, which is a lot of my clinical background. And he started getting some very threatening text messages from rival gang members of one of the kids that he was working with. And he was really triggered through some of the things that was being said to him in these text messages, and just helping him kind of process some of that transference and countertransference and learn more about himself as a clinician. Felt like I was acting in a counselor role in that scenario.
Yes, thank you. You know, sometimes I think too, when our supervisees are struggling, we sometimes help them really become aware of it. They may have no awareness of what the actual emotion is. And so it's not counseling, but it's important to process what's going on inside of you when you're sitting with a client, so that you don't mix up your stuff with their stuff. Thank you, Dr. Burkhart. Anybody else?
I guess on a different note, with a different doc student who's stuck in his, he's got to present a proposal in 2 weeks, and he got stuck, you know, couldn't figure out why he wasn't doing anything, why he wasn't doing research, why he wasn't, and the deadline keeps creeping up. So we just took a little time to look at, you know, kind of where his energy was going instead, and he was able to sort of see that he needed to create a doorway into his proposal, and he started to see the energy he needs to use to, and what he was afraid of in terms of attacking this proposal. So that was a little bit of a counseling sort that would happen.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, helping our supervisees gain self-awareness. You know, we have that dual awareness of what's going on inside of us and what's going on in the session, what's going on in the client, and we need to have that self-awareness in order to really be fully present with our clients, and so we can our clients, so we can help our supervisees in that process learn to be more self-aware when things are uncomfortable. Thank you. So when a supervisor assumes the role of consultant, this is where there is more of a collaborative effort with the supervisor and supervisee. You might often use with counselors who are more advanced in the process. You might discuss therapeutic interventions to use, how you might treat a client. You want to help them with their decision making. Can you think of any examples, again, where you've acted in the role of consultant while supervising that you're willing to share?
Cheryl, I think this is the most common role that I think we think of whenever we think of supervision. That we have students or interns come in, or supervisees, and they want to talk about a case, and it feels like this is typically where I land on most of my supervision sessions with my supervisees. Is just really as a clinical consultant on some of their cases, and each session is different, and we're constantly kind of oscillating in and out of these different roles. But it feels as if this is where I spend most of my time with my supervisee, who's just consulting on cases.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Cheryl, I have an example of this. I'm currently doing a directed study with a student, and she's in her 4th semester of internship. So she's a little bit more advanced than some of our students. And so we spend a lot of time watching video together, and it feels a little bit more like consultation, where we're bouncing ideas off of each other and maybe asking her questions to probe her. But it's different than that like education piece. It's more where we're kind of talking through what we're seeing together in the video.
Great, thank you. Those are all very good examples of the roles that we move in and out of. And now what I want to shift to is how this points to personal advocacy for our supervisees. So when you, and I'm suggesting that you share your supervision model with your supervisees. When you do that, you remove some of that mystery of that supervision process, and you start off with transparency in that sharing. And this is also beneficial to your supervisees because it's very likely someday that they will end up supervising others, regardless of if they go into agency work or a church or a private practice. Anyway, but in addition to an environment of transparency and supervision, this helps your supervisees learn from and see the roles that you're using. And they also begin to understand how needs-based this is, that this is really based upon what they need. And instead of supervisees perhaps feeling that they need to hide some of their mistakes and maybe doing image management in supervision, I have found that this really facilitates the ability for supervisees to ask for what they need from me, and sometimes even to say, when they learn through this process, what role they think they need. And this leads to the ability not just to ask for what they need in site supervision, but also in their university supervision. So after we've been working together with this model, I will ask students what they think they need in the situations and the problems that they bring to supervision, and they learn to articulate them. Of course, we continue to give our feedback that is what we know that they need. But this is a way to help them be more self-aware and to articulate what their needs are and advocate for themselves. And one of the additional ways that I have found that we can help our students advocate for themselves in learning to find out what they need is through the use of a tool that it's actually used to evaluate supervisors. And I'll click on that. It's called the Supervisee Evaluation of Supervisor, and the information's there. It's from a counseling book. And when it is used as part of the supervision process, it helps supervisees to frame up their needs when they look at the material provided in this form. And of course, in here it's poor, adequate, and good for what they believe the supervision is that they're receiving. I recommend that you use this document collaboratively. And it's on page 309 and 310 of the Practicum and Internship text by Scott, Boylan, and Youngers. So anyway, if supervisees will complete this form and look at it to evaluate the supervision they're receiving, but with the intent and purpose of growing and learning how to ask for their needs to be met, I think it can be very helpful. And so I want to move to, obviously we don't have time to go over all of them in the short time we have tonight, but there are 27 questions in this book. And for example, the first one would be that my supervisor gives time and energy in my observations and in my tape processing and my case conferences. Another one, my supervisor accepts and respects me as a person. My supervisor recognizes and encourages further development of my strengths and capabilities. My supervisor gives me useful feedback when I do something well. Now, if, for example, a student does not think that they're receiving useful feedback and they don't really know what they're doing well, then this would be a way for them to look at that and say, this is something I need to advocate for myself, and to talk to my supervisor and say, for example, it would be really helpful for me to receive specific feedback from what you believe that I'm doing well. So this number 7, provides suggestions for developing my counseling skills. That's another one where a student could then advocate for his or herself. So the number 12, it gives me useful feedback when I do something wrong. I could see that would be something to process. Can anyone, is anyone willing to just kind of think out loud through this with us about how that one measure might be helpful in supervision? Can you see that playing out in your supervisee asking for what you need?
Cheryl, this may not be directly related to your question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Hi. What I was thinking of too is also just some of our own like self-disclosure of mistakes we made when we were students and going through the process of learning for ourselves. That creates a sense of comfort where the supervisees are more relaxed and more willing to share some of their experiences, because I can remember when I was going through my internship that I felt that I needed to be perfect with everything that I was doing. And it was tough to admit when I was making a mistake or didn't understand, how to use a tool or how to evaluate something that was going on in session. So sometimes just sharing some of those experiences of our own can create that sense to get our students to open up more about their own weaknesses or areas they need to improve upon.
Very good point. Self-disclosure of weaknesses is helpful. Anyone else? What might it be like for you if a supervisee came to you and said, I think I have a hard time receiving feedback when I do something wrong. Can we process that? Or what type of a role would you see yourself in if a student came to you asking for feedback when wanting useful feedback when they do something wrong, and maybe having a hard time receiving feedback from you when they receive corrective feedback?
I just had an experience about a month ago. I consult for an agency, and one of the therapists that I'm responsible for asked to talk to me. Long story short, she had been very resistant to, she was new and had been very sort of hesitant, and she called it resistant to listening to me, and wanted to talk to me about what that was about, and to see if we could talk it through. I said, of course. So we sat down and had a conversation about the fact that she'd had a supervisor before that was Black. And I bump into this a little bit where people are hesitant because I'm an African-American doc who, whatever they think about that. But we had a really nice conversation where she was able to put her hesitation and fear on the table and have it received in a graceful way, and have it validated. And then she said, I think I can hear from you based on how you handled me just now. It's way different than the way I was handled before. So that's not an unusual conversation for me anyway. Something like that might happen, but that just happened probably for a month ago or so, 3-4 weeks ago.
Thank you. And what role did it feel like you were in that conversation?
I felt like she we had a conversation more collaboratively. Like I'm her supervisor, but she was talking to me like I wanted her to come at me as an equal, because apparently what happened was really bad, and so she talked to me sort of professional to professional, and but she wanted me to be clear about she was puzzled by it, why she was so resistant and what was bugging her about our relationship, and she finally figured it out. So my job was to sort of listen and affirm and validate. I get that. I get that transference. I get that blurry situation. She didn't know before she met me that I was African American, and that actually kind of shocked her initially when she first met me. So, I feel like we handled it sort of from a collaborative perspective, and as I'm more like a consultant to another pro.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else have a situation where you've just really any feedback when you've given feedback to a supervisee and it's been met maybe with resistance?
I think some of what's going on here is what I just call humility. How humble are we and vulnerable? We're asking them to be vulnerable with us on certain things, and are we willing to be vulnerable to them, on where we are? And hey, I didn't do this real well starting out, and this is kind of where I'm coming from with this. And just, if we're asking them to be vulnerable, there's a sense which we got to be transparent and vulnerable with them too, and just asking for feedback. Hey, did I step over bounds here? Did I feel, was that too heavy? Was that too soft? Just getting their feedback on that. Then they realize we're reachable, touchable, and we're okay with being vulnerable too.
Thank you. Very good point. So I would ask, how open and willing do you think that, I'm saying this, the broader you, how open would you be to give a questionnaire to your student on how their needs are being met, and to work through it as a way for your student to ask for what they need? What would that be like as the supervisor?
Cheryl, I've never used a format such as that, but I know anytime that I've started with a new supervisor, supervisee, one of the first things I always mention to them that, please let me know what you think that you need or what I can do to help you through this process. And I just kind of reiterate that as we go through the whole thing. I'll say, is there anything you need? Is there anything I can do for you? Or what do you need from me? Just to create that atmosphere so they can be more willing to open and share about anything they may need or may not really realize that they need. Because that comes up, sometimes that'll come up too. They don't really understand what they need.
Yes, I think that's often an issue, of not knowing what I need, and also not knowing how to ask for what I need.
Yes, I think it gives categories and language that's really needed. I would be really open to using questions like these.
Thank you.
Mary, I think, just if I can jump in, Dr. Mark, I think both of you are right on it. We know that one of the challenges, one of the deficits of most master's level clinical education programs is that we really don't train people on how to be good supervisors, or really even what to look for in good supervision a lot of times. And most CACREP programs are so busy trying to cram all the material that we need to cram into a CACREP program to meet CACREP standards, that there's very little room to really allow students to really consider what it looks like to be a good supervisee and how to utilize supervision well. So I very much agree that assessments like this, I think, give students language and terms and even thoughts that they may not have otherwise, and really allows them and empowers them to advocate for themselves as supervisees, where really most master's programs don't empower them to do that.
Yeah, and so as we, let's see, I'm going to move to the next one. There we go. And so, so what I would ask is, how do you see using this evaluation of the site assisting that supervision process as a university supervisor? Because, the students have their faculty supervisor concerned with their skills, and then they have their supervision by their site supervisor. So I'm curious how you might see using this evaluation. I have my way I've used it, but I want to hear first from all of you, if you might, for those faculty members, how might you use this as a faculty supervisor? Well, maybe that's a leading question. I will, I'll tell you how I use it. I use it to help supervisees advocate for themselves by their supervisors. And then I actually tell the supervisor that we're working on advocating for ourselves and asking for what we need, and your supervisee will be coming to you with some of the needs that they have. And I have received very warm reception to that. And so I think as a university supervisor, we can also help our students that we're working with be able to articulate what it is they need in supervision, so that we all are then working together. So one of the things also, can you see how this contributes to personal advocacy by the supervisee? And think about the roles that it is requiring you to step into as a supervisor when your supervisee is asking you really a myriad of questions, but we really are empowering them and giving them language and tools to begin to understand what some of the things are that they should be receiving from supervision. And my guess is that they also then see some of the things they're receiving that they didn't know they were receiving. They say, oh, wow, you know, my supervisor really is helping me to encouraging me to evaluate myself. I see that now. So I think it has multi-purposes. But what I have found is when I make it a point to share my model of supervision, then my students and supervisees will come to me and say, I'll say, what is it that you think you need when they talk through a problem? You know, I think I just need to process how I feel about this, or I think I just need some resources or some tools to study to figure a way forward in this of what what techniques I might use. And so they begin to be able to articulate what it is they need from you, whether they need you in a teaching role, a counselor role, or as a consultant. And I think that's always, for me, exciting to see them be able to articulate what it is that they need. So the next slide. I just want to encourage you also to provide experiences for your supervisees to receive feedback and share their experiences of feedback. I encourage supervisees to give me a short summary, a reflection after supervision to give to me, just a short paragraph, and that helps me understand more clearly what they're taking in, and also how the roles of teacher, counselor, and consultant are received by my supervisees. So if you're a faculty supervisor, again, I encourage you to help your supervisees learn and empower them to ask for what they need from their site supervisors. This process will contribute to transparency and hopefully also strengthen the therapeutic alliance. And overall, it really does require for both the counselee and the supervisor to be transparent. And the counselee comes from that position of sometimes of not knowing. And so, as someone mentioned, having a humble attitude and being willing to be vulnerable yourself, I think really is beneficial for our supervisees when they're in this very challenging learning process. So potential outcomes of the discrimination model, being the teacher, the counselor, the consultant, helping our clients, our supervisees ask for what they need, requiring vulnerability, honesty, and transparency, and that openness to feedback, that contributes to that personal advocacy. And I really hope that this discrimination model, with the challenge to personal advocacy, challenges you to really to broaden your view of supervision, and it facilitates your supervisees advocating for themselves. Here are my references. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I welcome them. I'm going to stop sharing here. And if you all want to, you feel free to turn your cameras on so we can see one another if you're comfortable. You don't have to.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Any questions or comments or thoughts?
I would argue that I think you're right. I have been AMFT approved for over 20 years and been a clinical supervisor at some capacity since 1988. And I'm surprised at how few people are really trained to be good at supervision and able to, and I'm also surprised how many supervisees or counselors we've hired. We have, in the state of South Dakota, I probably hire 30 therapists, and 80% of them tell me their supervision experience was not positive.
Yeah, we need to do better as a profession.
Cheryl, Mary Ellen is typing in the chat. Can they get a copy of those 27 questions that you provided?
I will show you right here. It's this text, but I will also, if you have everybody's emails, I can send the, not the link, the reference of how to get it. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great list. And I will make sure that we get that to you. Cheryl, let's see. Dr. Burkhart says, do I see supervisors filling one particular role in the discrimination model over the other with students who are in their practicum or internship and are relatively new in the profession? Yes, those who are relatively new, it's mainly a teaching role. And then as they move more into, they may get caught up in a session and not know how to manage what they're doing, and then they begin to feel they may be anxious or angry as they start getting into some of the issues. But yeah, usually it's teaching, those that are new in the profession, teaching skills. Yes, Betsy, I see you want it as well. Okay, we'll make sure you all get it. Anybody else have any questions? I'll give you all a minute. Okay, all right. I've learned early on supervision is a skill to be developed. Yes, it is. It is. And, you know, I just wonder if maybe us disclosing our model and what we're doing maybe also helps us hone in on our own skills as well as we're practicing it in a very outward manner. I don't know. That's a research study for somebody who wants a second PhD.
I was going to say, when I was finishing up my master's in the last month or so that we were doing clinicals, they made us give our people that we were our counselees a form where they evaluated us as counselors. And was the session what we good? Did we stay on topic? Did we develop them and that kind of good stuff? And so we were having to be developed as counselors, you know, and it was just kind of weird tricky getting feedback from the people that we had been seeing for 2 or 3 months. Okay, what do you think of us as a counselor? On doing that. So it was the same kind of principle somewhat.
Yeah. One question I'm just going to throw out to all of you, and of course I have no research for this, but as I've worked with this model, I've thought, I just wonder if we really are helping our supervisees become more transparent to their needs and more vulnerable. And if in our supervision sessions, there's more of this kind of more meeting of this genuine place of where we are in the here and now. I'm just wondering if that isn't also a practice of kind of paying attention to what's going on right now in the here and now with the session. And I wonder if maybe it would help us teach that skill of immediacy, because that's really the hardest skill to teach. So I'm wondering if just meeting those needs in that session might have some more benefits. Anyway, that's another research study, but I do think that we can help our students learn and supervisees learn how to advocate for their needs, and then hopefully meet them better in supervision. You're welcome, Mary Ellen and Deb. All right, thank you all. If you don't have any more questions, I'll just say again, thank you so much for coming and for spending your time here this evening. And if you have any questions, I'm cmark@ccu.edu, or you can always get a hold of Jessica. I'm always happy to talk to you. So thank you all.
Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great night, everybody.